Howdy Cloud Gurus, and welcome to the premiere episode of Azure Service Spotlight. I'm Shawn Johnson, and in this series, we'll take an Azure service, put it under the spotlight, and find out what it's all about. This episode, we're going to talk about Windows Virtual Desktop. Now, we all know that the cloud is literally at your service. Infrastructure, platform, software, databases, the list goes on and on. They're all provided as a service. Yeah, I'm sorry I keep doing that. Well, say hello to Microsoft's Desktop as a Service offering, Windows Virtual Desktop. This is a complete virtual desktop infrastructure, or VDI, solution hosted entirely in Azure. Now, there's a reason why we chose Windows Virtual Desktop as the initial service that we're spotlighting in the series. As you all know, these are incredibly challenging times. Around the world, more and more employees find themselves working from home. This dynamic brings about certain challenges. Most importantly, how do companies go about preparing their environment for the mass influx of remote workers? Companies can use this service to create virtual desktop environments. These virtual desktops might simulate a workstation that would traditionally exist in an office. Employees can access these virtual desktops from anywhere that has internet access, and in turn have full use of the applications and data they'd normally have as if they were sitting at their desk in the office. In this episode, we'll take a look at the capabilities, requirements, and features of Windows Virtual Desktop, or WVD. We'll then show you how to easily create, configure, and use the service. After the demo, we'll wrap up our review with our pros, cons, and a final verdict of the solution. We've got a lot to cover, so let's get at it. Let's start off by looking at what Windows Virtual Desktop actually is. WVD is a fully managed virtual desktop infrastructure located in Azure. With on-premises deployments of VDI, companies had to manage all individual service components, like the remote desktop gateway, the connection broker, your session hosts, etc. With WVD, all of these components are fully managed by Microsoft. Most modern Microsoft applications are supported, along with other legacy Win32 applications your company may still be using. Microsoft goes through great lengths to guarantee application compatibility and will even assist your company to test and retrofit applications to work with WVD. Windows Virtual Desktop is secure. Since user data is stored and accessed through the virtual desktop, the data is not stored on the user's local workstation. This minimizes the risk of compromised data in the event that devices are lost or stolen. Someone who's left his iPhone at numerous airport gift shops, I and ACG can certainly appreciate this important feature. Past VDI implementations built on an older version of Windows Server provided a less than ideal user experience. WVD provides a full-featured Windows 10 desktop. The goal is that remote users shouldn't be able to distinguish their WVD experience from what they see while they're sitting in the office. In addition to publishing a full desktop experience, we also have the ability to publish individual applications such as Microsoft 365 apps like Word, Excel, and Outlook. These applications look and feel exactly like their locally installed counterparts. The only difference the user will see is the addition of the remote desktop icon, or glyph, located at the bottom corner of their app icon. There are a few prerequisites that we need to take into account when implementing WVD. To access Windows 10 virtual desktops, our users must be licensed with qualified Microsoft 365 products. We'll get into client licensing details a little bit later in the episode. We'll also need an Azure Active Directory instance for your tenant. If you're already a Microsoft 365 client, the great news is you're already using Azure AD to manage your cloud user identities. In order to ensure access to on-premises resources, we'll need a Windows Server Active Directory environment as well. We'll also need to ensure that this directory is synchronized with our Azure AD tenant. We can accomplish this using Azure AD Connect. Finally, we'll need an Azure Virtual Network containing either an on-premises AD domain controller or connected to a network that contains one. For most organizations using 365 and hybrid identity, all of these prerequisites are already being met. Now, there are so many benefits to using Windows Virtual Desktop. As we spoke about earlier, it delivers a consistent desktop for all of your remote users. They have access to the applications that they need to perform their tasks and nothing else that users might tend to install on their local workstations. If you want to install Candy Crush or Facebook for your users, I'm going to leave that up to you. I'm not making that call. Your users are able to access WVD from anywhere an internet connection is available. They can use clients for Windows, iOS, Android, and macOS devices. They can even have the option to forego the client altogether and access WVD from any HTML5 capable web browser. Unless your users are still using Netscape Navigator to browse the web, then they probably already have one of these installed. Now, out of the box, or I guess cloud, Windows Virtual Desktop delivers a clean, fresh installation of Windows 10. However, the service is completely customizable. If you have a custom image of a Windows workstation that you'd like to use for your remote workforce, you can upload it to Azure and use that as the base for your WVD instances. That image can contain applications that your users might access every day. This can save valuable time when implementing the service. Windows Virtual Desktop is also completely scalable. When our remote workforce grows, we can manually scale the number or size of our virtual machines to accommodate the increased demand. We can also use Azure Automation to auto-scale our environment just as we would an Azure Web App or a VM scale set. The cost of implementing Windows Virtual Desktop can be influenced by a number of factors. The greatest factor is client licensing. The good news is, if you're already a Microsoft 365 customer and you have any of the following licenses, then you're eligible to access Windows Virtual Desktops and applications. Accessing Windows Server Virtual Desktops still requires the old Remote Desktop Services CAL that are used in on-premises Windows Remote Desktop solutions. If your goal is to provide a Windows workstation type environment for your remote workforce, then Microsoft 365 or the Windows 10 licenses are definitely the way to go. Next, we need the capability to host the virtual desktops. We can accomplish this using Azure Virtual Machines. Now, whether or not we decide to use personal versus pool desktop environments will play a part in the cost. The great news is that when used for Windows Virtual Desktop, these virtual machines are built at the Linux compute rate. This allows for considerable cost savings over VMs that are built at the Windows Server compute rate. For example, a virtual machine with 4 virtual CPUs and 16 gig of RAM built at the Windows compute rate clocks in at $10,400 a month. The same VM built at the Linux compute rate comes in at almost half that, just under $6,800. Combine this with the 1 and 3 year reserved instance pricing, and the savings can really begin to add up. Storage for our user profiles also comes into play. These profiles are stored as Windows Virtual Hard Disk or VHDX files. These files are stored in an Azure storage account. The cost of the storage is going to be based on the performance tier of your storage account and obviously how much data your user profiles consume. Azure charges for the amount of data leaving the Azure Data Center, so we've got to take this bandwidth cost into effect when calculating our overall TCO. Now let's talk about what you don't have to buy. Equipment. Users can access WVD using their existing hardware, so no additional capital expenditures are required for updated laptops or other devices. The Azure Pricing Calculator now provides pricing for WVD. Use it to get an estimate of your overall cost for running Windows Virtual Desktop. All right, the time has come. Let's head to the demo and check it out. Okay, let's have a look at Windows Virtual Desktop. I've got my Azure portal open with a resource group that I have deployed 2 virtual machines into. The first VM is running Windows Server 2016 and has been configured as a Windows Active Directory domain. My domain is barthur.com, and I have pre-provisioned several user accounts for the purposes of this demonstration. We'll be using Megan Bowen's account primarily in this demo, and her account already contains an active Outlook mailbox as well as some data in her OneDrive. I have also installed Azure Active Directory Connect on this virtual machine and have synchronized all of these local users and groups with my Azure Active Directory tenant. The other virtual machine that I have created is just a standard Windows 10 desktop. It has been joined to my barthur.com domain and I have installed the remote desktop application. The remote desktop client that comes with Windows 10 by default will not work with Windows Virtual Desktop, so we have to go out and download the remote desktop client from Microsoft's site. Let's head back to our Azure portal, and if we're going to demonstrate Windows Virtual Desktop, we should probably deploy it first. So I'll head back out into my home screen, and I will search for Windows Virtual Desktop, and then click on the entry that appears here at the top. In order to get started with WVD, we need to create a host pool, so I'll do that now. It is really simple to get this going. We simply have to assign it to a resource group. We have to name it, specify its location, and whether or not we want a validation environment. A validation environment allows you to set up a clone of your Windows Virtual Desktop environment that you can use for Windows patching and updates to verify that they will work in your production environment prior to rolling it out to your users. And we have to determine a host pool type. We have personal versus pooled. I'm going to select pooled. And then we can do a session limit for our users. So our maximum number of users in this demo will be 2. And then our load balancing algorithm. Breadth first means they'll be distributed across the virtual machines in our environment. Depth first means that Windows Virtual Desktop will take a look at the session host with the least number of connections and assign our user to it. I'm going to choose breadth first, and next we'll head to our virtual machines. We're going to need virtual machines for our remote users to connect to, so we'll do that now. We need to determine a size for the virtual machines. I'm going to choose B2S virtual machines. They're pretty small for the purposes of this demo. Specify the number of VMs that we're going to distribute in our WVD environment. I'll just go ahead and choose 2, and then we have to give it a prefix for our session host. We'll call them WVD session, and that will be the prefix that all of our VMs will be given when they are deployed. I'm going to choose an image type from the gallery. Once again, great feature. You can create your own custom image for your virtual machine deployments, but I'm simply going to choose Windows 10 Enterprise Multi-Session version 1909 with the Microsoft 365 apps already installed. We have to fill out the standard fare for our virtual machines. Do we want to use premium storage or not? What virtual network are we going to put it on? Do we want to assign a public IP? Typically, you don't want to do that. You want your users to use the remote desktop application to connect to the virtual machines, and you do not want them publicly accessible. So I'm going to choose no. We'll go ahead and leave the network security group as basic, and I will not open up any public inbound ports. Now, this is really cool. Down here at the bottom of the screen, you have the ability to join these virtual machines to your domain at the time of the deployment. I'm going to choose that now, and I'm going to specify my domain. We can optionally specify an organizational unit to place the VMs. Then we simply need to provide a user account that can join these machines to our domain and the appropriate password. We're all set with the virtual machine portion. Let's head to our workspace. So an application group is what the users are going to see when they log into the WVD environment. That application group belongs to what's known as a workspace, and we have to have one of each to start, so let's create them now. We're going to click yes to register the desktop app group. That provides the full desktop experience to our users. A little bit later in the demo, we will create another app group with individual applications. We don't have a workspace, so we're going to create one now. WVD workspace 1. And that's all she wrote. We can tag it if we want to. Otherwise, let's review it and create it. Everything looks good, so away we go. This will take a couple of minutes. I'm going to go grab some coffee, and then we'll see our environment in action. All right, my deployment is complete. Took about 10 minutes to get everything up and running. A few more things we need to configure here before we can turn it loose to my remote desktop user. The first thing we need to do is take a look at our application group that has been created. And specifically, when we go into our application group, we need to assign it to one or more of our users. If we don't do that, then they won't be able to access the workspace. Let's go ahead and click on assignments now, and we will assign this to our demo user account, Megan. We're all set, so let's head back over to our Windows 10 virtual machine. We'll fire up our remote desktop application, and by simply clicking the subscribe button and logging in to Azure with our user account, we are presented with workstations that we have been authorized to use, and after a few seconds, we now see our full desktop experience that we can access from anywhere. And now we have a full Windows desktop, just as if we are sitting in the office, with access to all of our Microsoft 365 applications, such as Outlook, providing a full mail client experience, as well as other Office applications such as Word, Excel, OneNote, and what's really great about the solution is we also have the ability to access our OneDrive. We can go in and modify all of our documents that have been saved into OneDrive, and we do not have to save a copy of these documents on our local workstation. That makes this an incredibly secure solution for our remote workforce. I mentioned that not only can we publish a full desktop experience for our users, but we can also publish individual applications as well. Heading into our host pool, we have the ability to create another application group. When we create a new application group, it's automatically specified for remote applications. All we need to do is name it, assign users just as we did for the full desktop experience, and assign applications that we want to publish. Register the application group with our existing workspace. And just like that, we have the ability to publish individual applications as well as the full desktop experience. All Megan has to do on her end is refresh her workspace, and Outlook and Word are now available to use as standalone applications. The applications will look and feel just as if they were installed on her local machine. The only difference is down in the taskbar, you can see the small glyph in her Outlook icon. Now that Megan has subscribed to her feed using the remote desktop client, she's also able to access her applications from the Start menu. That's just an added benefit to the fully integrated experience provided by the remote desktop application. So as you can see by this demonstration, it absolutely couldn't be easier to deploy Windows Virtual Desktop for your remote workforce. So, what's the verdict? There are many advantages to implementing WVD for your remote workforce. First and foremost, it's secure, allowing your users to save data in the cloud as opposed to on their local workstations. The solution is scalable, allowing for you to increase or decrease your WVD environment based on user demand. WVD is also very cost-effective, particularly if you're already a Microsoft 365 customer. And finally, it just provides a great user experience for your users as opposed to older versions of remote desktop services. Now, there are a couple of drawbacks. Firstly, there is currently limited support for third-party applications like Zoom or Slack. But honestly, with the rapid adoption of these tools in the remote workplace, I just can't see them being left out in the cold for much longer. Also, with any remote solution, the internet speed of the client can be a factor in the overall user experience. So, should you invest, evaluate, or revisit? If you aren't a Microsoft 365 client, or you're licensed for a lesser Microsoft 365 offering, I would recommend that you evaluate WVD to see if it meets your remote workforce needs. It could save your company money and save you the headache of managing an on-premises remote desktop solution. As always, every organization is different and may not realize the cost benefit of implementation. But not so fast. In typical Shawn fashion, I'm not going to give you a straight answer. If you are an existing Microsoft 365 customer, especially one using hybrid identity, then my recommendation is a solid invest. You probably already have the prerequisites in place to support it, so you can be up and running in no time to support your remote workforce, potentially saving some money over traditional remote solutions such as VPN. In these increasingly trying times, it's important to consider the safety of your workforce while maintaining productivity. Technologies such as Windows Virtual Desktop can help your company achieve these goals not only now, but in the months and years ahead as telecommuting becomes more of a standard practice. So that's it. Keep being awesome, Cloud Gurus, and I hope to see you next time on Azure Service Spotlight.